Our next lesson we're going to actually use the calculator on. So if you don't have your calculator, you want to go ahead and grab it. We're going to talk about some calculator skills with fractions and decimals. We're also going to do some absolute value and ordering numbers. So for fractions, I'm going to show you two different calculators here. This one on the left is the Casio FX300 ES Plus. Some of you might have this one at home. And if you do, we're going to be focusing on this button today, as well as this second button here, which is a shift function. So in order to use this button right here, this one, you would just actually end up pressing it, and then you would use the keypad up here and your numbers to actually type in your fractions. If you are trying to use the other one here, which is for mixed numbers, this is actually a second function. So you're going to have to shift first, and then you're going to have to actually press that button to be able to type in a mixed number on this particular calculator. If you have the older Casio FX300, which is the MS, this one right here, our fraction button is going to be right here. We're going to be using this today, as well as this second function, which is also going to be taken care of by using the shift button and then the fraction button, which would use this one right here. This is our improper fraction, so we're going to be doing that one. For us on the older Casio here, changing fractions to decimals, we'll actually just repress this fraction button again. But if you're on the newer Casio, we're going to be using this S to D as well as this one right here. So this button here, this S to D, is going to change it from a fraction to a decimal and vice versa. And then if you need it to go to an improper fraction, you're going to use this button, but you need to use the shift function, which is this yellow one here. So you would press shift first and then this button in order to go from an improper to a mixed number fraction. So in the first example, we're going to go back here, fractions and decimals on the calculator. So fraction mixed number, this is just 2/3. So go ahead on your calculator, you want to type in either 2. If you're on the old one, you want to type in 2, fraction button, and then 3. So it's actually going to end up looking kind of like that on your calculator. And if you're over here, you're going to go ahead and use this button, and then it'll bring it up and you're going to fill it in 2/3. So when you do that, then there is no improper form. So if you were to hit shift function or that shift S to D button, there's going to be no improper form here because this fraction is not improper. The decimal form, then, you want to go ahead and hit that SD button, or if you're on the other older calculator on the right, you want to go ahead and hit the fraction button again, and you'll notice that it changes your fraction over to a decimal, and you're going to see 0.6 repeating here. So that's going to be your first example. The next one is -2 3/4. So what you're going to do is you want to use that mixed number button. If you're on the new ones, you want to hit shift and then your fraction button, and you'll fill in the big two, the -2, and then the 3/4. And over here, your negative for you guys is just right here, right underneath your fraction button. If you're using the older calculator, you're going to type in a -2. So your negative button is right below the fraction as well. Then you would click the fraction button, and then you would put in your 3, and then the fraction button, and then a 4. So that's how you would type a mixed number in on this one. You want to go ahead, and this is already your fraction or mixed number. And then you want to go ahead and change this to improper form. So you want to hit either shift fraction button if you're on the old one on the right, or if you have that new colorful calculator, you want to hit the shift and then the S to D button. And that's going to change your improper form. You should then see -11/4 on your screen. And then you want to hit the fraction button or the SD button, and that's going to change you to a decimal, which is going to be -2.75. So the next one is 2/3 plus 1/8. So we're going to actually type in 2/3 plus 1/8 on your calculator. And when you hit equals, you're going to get 19/24. So your calculator automatically reduces for you, and it'll write it as a mixed number unless you tell it to do an improper. So this one, will this have an improper form? That's my question to you. Is there going to be an improper form here? There is no improper form, so if we hit that button, we're not going to get anything different than what we already have. I'm going to have you go ahead and change it over to a decimal. And I got 0.7916, and the 6 keeps on repeating itself. So we're going to go ahead and round this off to the nearest tenths, and we're going to call it 0.8 rounded for our answer. The next one, we're typing in -3/4 minus 2/5. So go ahead and type that into your calculator. I got -1 3/20. Go ahead, flip that over to an improper fraction on your calculator. You get -23/20. And then final step, change it over to a decimal. -1.15 is your answer here. For the next one, we're going to show how to add mixed numbers on your calculator. So type in your mixed numbers either using your shift and the fraction button, or if you're on the old one, just do your fraction or your number, fraction button, numerator, fraction button, denominator. So for this one, when I add them, I get 5 5/8. And then I'm going to go ahead and change it over to an improper fraction on my calculator. We're going to leave it 45/8. And then I'm going to go ahead and have you change it over to a decimal. This one does terminate, so I'm going to ask you to just type in exactly what it is that you get. And when you do this one, you get 5.625. All right, taking a look then at your next couple ones, we're going to try these on the calculator. So we're going to type in -7/8 plus 2 3/5, and you get 1 29/40. I'm going to have you go ahead, try this one. You have a decimal and you have a fraction piece here. So I'm going to ask you for your answer in decimal form. So go ahead, type that in and get that answer. I ended up with a -10.62 for my answer here. And finally, this last one, we're going to go ahead and type this one in. I got -10 2/5, which you could also change over to the decimal -10.4. Second part of our lesson, this one's going to be a no calculator section here now. We're going to talk a little bit about absolute value. Absolute value is the distance a number is away from 0. So the absolute value of 4 is 4 because you're 4 spots away from 0 on the number line. But the absolute value of -4 is also 4 because you're 4 spots away from 0 on the number line. So regardless of what happens, whatever your number is inside your absolute value symbols, your answer is going to be positive. Absolute value symbols are going to look like this. You have just straight up and down lines surrounding your number. So you would read this problem, the absolute value of 4, and our answer is 4. The absolute value of -4 is 4. Kind of like exponents were before, when this negative is outside with the exponents, we're going to do the absolute value of 4 first and then apply the negative. So the absolute value of 4 is 4, and there's a negative out front, so we're going to keep that out front. In question number 4, we're going to do the problem inside here, which is 3 minus 8. So I'm going to add the opposite. 3 plus a -8 would give me -5. And I still have those absolute value bars, and the absolute value of -5 is 5. Take a look at question number 5. I'm going to have you answer this one. You didn't have to apply integer rules. 8 minus 3 is just 5, and the absolute value of 5 is 5. For question number 6, we have 5 minus the absolute value of -2. So we're going to do the absolute value of -2 first, which is 2, and we have 5 minus 2. 5 minus 2 is going to be 3. Try number 7 and type in your answer. For number 7, you're going to do the absolute value of -6, which is 6. And you're going to add on -3 at the front, and -3 plus 6 is 3. In question number 8, we have no operation bumped up here, so we can understand it's multiply. Absolute value of -3 is 3. And you have 4 times, and 4 times 3 is 12. So on to the very last page, we're going to talk also in this lesson about ordering fractions, decimals, percents, and square roots. So it says change all quantities into the same form with common denominators. There is a little trickier, easier way. We can make common denominators by actually cross multiplying here. So if I have two fractions, I'm going to take this denominator and multiply by the numerator across from it. 6 times 2 is 12. And over here, I'm going to do 4 times 3 is 12. So because those are equal, 2/4 is equal to 3/6. This one's the same idea, only realize I have a negative. 5 times 4 is negative 20. 9 times 4 is 36, but it's also negative. Remember, the negatives work backwards, so because this is a bigger number, it's actually smaller than negative 20. On number 3, I have a mixed number here, so before I can actually take care of the comparison of these two, I need to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. So 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9/7. Now that we have it in that format, you're going to go ahead and compare these two. 7 times 10 is 70, 6 times 9 is 54, so this is larger. In number 4, we have 1 and 4/7, and we have 1.8. So what I want to do is, we're not using calculators here. I'm going to change this to 7 times 1 plus 4 is 11/7. And 1.8 I could write as 1 and 8/10, which can be reduced to 4/5. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9/5. And then I'm going to go ahead and compare them. 5 times 11 is 55. 7 times 9 is 63. So 1 and 4/7 is less than 1.8. Question number 5, using that same strategy that we just used in number 4, change these so that they're both fractions and then go ahead and compare them. So if I did 1.5, that's 1.5, which is actually 3/2. And this is 8/5. So 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 8 is 16. So 1.5 is less than 8/5. For question number 6, if I actually went to change this one, 8 times 1 plus 3 is 11/8. Notice that they're the same, so I can just put my equal sign. Number 7, we have the square root of 32 and 5.1. So the square root of 32 is going to be between 25 and 36, which is going to be between 5 and 6. So the thing is, it's a little bit closer. 32 is closer to 36 than 25, which lets me know that it's going to be over more towards this end. So it's going to be kind of up above probably 5.5. So this is going to be larger than 5.1. In question number 8, I'm going to have you go ahead and do this one. Square root of 49 is 7, so 7 is going to be less than 7.1. Question number 9, we're going to order from least to greatest. So it's going to be easiest if they're all in the same format. And thinking about 55%, I can change that to a decimal because there's 2 decimals here, and 1/2 is already 0.5. That's pretty easy. So this would be 0.55. So if I'm looking from least to greatest, it sometimes helps. This has 2 numbers after it. You might want to put that 0 just for comparison. So I notice this one's my smallest, and I'm going to rewrite it in its original form, which is 1/2, followed by 0.54, followed by 0.55, which originally was 55%, followed by 0.72. Number 10, place the letter for each number on the number line. So we're going to go ahead looking at this one. We have -6/5, which would be -1 and 1/5. So we're going to go to -1, and we're going to go just a little bit past that. We're going to call that letter A. Using that same strategy, change it to a mixed number and place it on the number line. So for 8/3, that's going to be 2 and 2/3. So it's going to be between 2 and 3 and 2/3 of the way there. So we're going to call that letter B. For number C, 0.14, it's going to be just right at 0 there pretty much. For D, we have 150%. Change it to a decimal. That'll be 1.5. And then E is the absolute value of negative 1/3. So this is actually going to be 1/3. This was 0.1. 1/3 would be right up after it. So that's going to be letter E right there. In number 11, we're going to do a little bit more ordering. Here we have some negatives, we have some positives. So the negatives are going to be our least numbers. So it's kind of an easy place to start because I'm able to compare them pretty easily. And then looking at these, I have to work. Absolute value, this is going to be 0.6, 4/5 versus 7/12. This is really close to being 1, because if it were 5/5, then I would be 1. I'm on the smaller side of 1, but it's really, really close. And 7/12 is really, really close to being just over half, because 6/12 would be half. So I'm going to go with the fact that this is just over half, and that's 0.6. This is going to go with being smaller than the absolute value of negative 0.6. And since this is really close to 1, that's going to be my biggest one. Last one, we have Rita's conducted a survey about customers' favorite flavors. 37% said cherry was their favorite. 2/5 choose mango. And 0.11 choose blue raspberry. So this is mango, blue raspberry, and cherry. List the flavors in order from most popular to least popular. 2/5 is going to be 4/10. And that would really mean 40 over 100. So I could actually change these all to percents if I wanted to, or change them all to decimals. It doesn't really matter, because this one is 11/100. So this would be 11%, this would be 40%, and 37%. So listing them in order, mango is going to be our most popular, followed by cherry, and then followed by blue raspberry. So if we want to number those for our purposes. All right, and that wraps it up for Unit 2 then. That was our final lesson for Unit 2.